Good morning. As requested, here is the screencast of Scientists Reveal 3 Keys to Happiness by ABC News, October 2nd, 2003. Several studies have worked towards revealing the key to happiness. However, a new study by Stephen and Rachel Kaplan reveals that there might actually be 3 keys to happiness. As you read, take notes on how nature affects people. And then we'll move into the body of the text. I have my handy dandy highlighter, so as I see stuff that I will highlight, and you should as well. In the margins of a piece of notebook paper, write down things that occur to you as we're reading. Paragraph 1. What would it take to make you really satisfied with your life? According to decades of research by a husband and wife team of psychologists at the University of Michigan, you need to put yourself in an environment that meets 3 basic needs. So if you're taking notes on notebook paper, you should actually maybe on your notebook paper put a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3. So what are those 3 key things going to be? And as you read, then you take notes. That keeps you cognitively aware of your purpose for reading. To make your way down the road to happiness, you need to feel competent and believe that you can make a difference. You also need to understand what the heck is going on around you and have the opportunity to choose your own options. So you could fill out those 3 things right there. You need to feel confident, you need to understand the world around you, and you need an opportunity to make choices. So there's your 1, 2, and 3. Competency, understanding, choices, if you want to get it really, really short. Before you start firing off all those emails about love, money, health, and so on, give these folks a chance to explain. They arrived at their conclusions partly by showing people pictures of nature. What? Picturing a perfect life. Stephen Kaplan, who is also a professor of electrical engineering and computer science in addition to being a psychologist, and his wife, Rachel Kaplan, professor of environment and behavior, started down this road decades ago during the horror that followed the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. What could have precipitated such an unreasonable act of violence? Could it be they wondered that violence could stem, at least partly, from an unhealthy environment? So what starts violence? An unhealthy environment. Love that highlighter. Some environments bring out the best in people, Stephen Kaplan says. Others do exactly the opposite. How can you describe an environment that brings out the best in people? At the time, there was no general consensus. And so you got to look that up. Most of you will not know general consensus. So general you might know, but consensus, you got to look that one up. And consensus is actually, I'm going to do this one for you the first time, and a word that means agree. I think mine goes off the page there, sorry. I need a stylist. But consensus means agreement. So at the time, there was no general agreement among psychologists as to what constituted a healthy environment. Constituted might also be a word that you need to look up in context. But the Kaplans were intrigued that one study that came about at the time suggesting that people really liked in their lives was a medium level of complexity. Medium level of complexity. What does that mean in your head? People don't like life to be too hard, but they don't like life to be too easy. They want it to be mediumly complex. We thought this was very odd, Kaplan says, because he and his wife had believed that people really needed in their lives was exposure to nature. So they set out to find out if they were right. Okay, and precipitate is a verb. Remember how we talked about in the last article, the little number over the word tells you where to find it on the page. So you can go back up and find precipitated. Okay, so the husband and wife team, they collected a bunch of photos showing urban scenes in Detroit and scenes of nature. Strangely enough, the urban scenes were shot by an expert photographer and were much better quality than the scenes of nature, which were shot by a mediocre photography after a dry, dull summer. So they weren't even spectacular nature pictures. Participants in the study were asked to indicate how much they liked each photo. With a single exception, every single nature picture was preferred over every single urban picture, Kaplan says. The one exception was an urban park. So what does that mean when you think about that? If people preferred pictures of nature over pictures of urban areas, then the environment in which you're in can make you happy. If you don't like the surroundings, then you're grumpy. Yearning for mystery. That's why I always tell you to make your bed and clean your room. In the years since, they have repeated that study dozens of times all over the world with the same results. One exception is among teenagers who prefer the urban scenes with city lights and things to do over scenes of nature. But Kaplan says they grow out of that stage. That makes sense. So why does that tell us anything about what we need for satisfying lives? The answer lies not just in the photos, but in some of the details. One of the first things we realized is that even among nature pictures, there's some people that prefer See, when you read it wrong, you gotta start over. One of the first things we realized is that even among nature pictures, there's some that people prefer very much to others, says Kaplan, who spoke for both he and his wife during the interview. It turned out that those were the photos where you could learn more if you walked into the scene. A trail leading around a tree and disappearing in the distance beckons the viewer to come in, look around, and learn something. That makes it a much more enticing photo. We hadn't realized that landscape architects had figured that out 50 years earlier, Kaplan says. A picture with a little mystery is preferable because people want to explore and they want to find things out, he says. Conversely, if they can't understand what's going on, they become angry. So, the picture told the story of every basic need among all persons, the need to understand their world, to pick their own options. They head down that trail and around that tree. Is taking control a mistake? But for that little adventure to be helpful, Kaplan says a person needs to believe that his or her life can make a difference. Nothing is more irritating or frustrating than the feeling of helplessness. So, you want to make a difference, you've got to take control, right? Not necessarily. You could just send me an email that says you're reading my stuff. Oh, I gotta pause because my sister's coming in. Sorry about that. But this whole idea of you have to take control, right? Not necessarily the Kaplan's belief. Taking control sometimes can be a bad mistake. There's a tremendous number of times when people want things to be under control, but they don't want to control them. That's a tremendous responsibility. So that word tremendous, I think you all probably all know tremendous. So tremendous, a great deal, a large amount. So somebody needs to be in control, even if it's not you. And look, here's mediocre down here. So mediocre was not very good. It had that small number 2 around it, and then that was in the text, and that's how you find it at the bottom. I got to get a stylus. I need one of my own pens. So gradually we came to the realization that what people want to do is participate. The opposite of helplessness is being heard. It's playing a part. It's being engaged in the action, not being ignored. Only then will it be possible for your life to make a difference. But the chances are that you are going to be ignored anyway unless others see you as competent and effective. The third step on Kaplan's road to self-fulfillment. And once again, they conclude nature can play a part. In a series of studies, the couple demonstrated that an office window that overlooks a natural scene helps people relax, thus fighting off the primary threats to competence, mental fatigue. Both energy and job enthusiasm rose among those people who had a chance to glance out the window occasionally and see something, even if it was only a tree. Nature, the Kaplans suggested, is competency's greatest ally. That's what I keep telling everybody who comes to Zoom with me. Open your windows, get some natural light. Natural healing. It even helps when trying to deal with a potentially fatal illness. One of their studies involved cancer patients. The first thing they wanted to do when they got their diagnosis was take a ride in the country, Kaplan said. The study found that spending 20 minutes outdoors each day helped the patients cope with mental fatigue of dealing with all the issues that come along with cancer. But wouldn't a debilitating disease like cancer wouldn't a debilitating disease like cancer be so overwhelming that it would wipe out the three conditions the Kaplans feel are so important? Aren't things like health, love, and even adequate income also extremely important? Of course, Kaplan says, but their findings lay the foundation for dealing with all of those issues. You've got to feel competent, think you can make a difference, and understand what's going on to handle any crisis. And for starters, take a look out the window occasionally. So down here in this wide open space, I think you can see my cursor. Down here is where you can take some notes and ask yourself, what are some things that you can do, one, to feel competent? Can you wash the dishes completely? Yes. Can you make your bed? Yes. Can you clean your room? Yes. Can you clean the bathroom? Yes. Those are all things that you can do competently. And I don't care what you say, making a small list of tasks that you want to complete make you feel better when you get them completed. If we scroll all the way back up to number 2, what is it we wrote number 2? What was that number 2? According to the results, you need to feel confident, and you want to feel like you can make a difference. So come back down here to number 2. What can you do to make a difference? And then here I'm going to put chores. So what can you do to make a difference? How can you do something that makes people feel better? Again, that comes back to these chores. If you do some of these chores, you clean your room, you do something that surprises people in your family that love you. Just do something small every single day. And this last one we talked about, I think I might have them out of order, but to understand. Do you understand what's going on around you right now? Are you watching any type of news? Are you reading anything other than Snapchat? Do you have factual information that makes you feel comfortable? You should research and find out. Okay, so I think that does it for this screencast. I attached several video links for you to look at. In conversations with other people, I am really hearing that if you're applying yourself, people are understanding more and doing better. If you're not understanding, make sure you send me a remind message and I will try to answer those questions for you. For now, that's the end of this week's screencast.